Hey guys, how's it going? It's Ed for me. Today I want to take some time to talk about what life is like owning a Tesla but not having any home charging. Let's get started. So some of you may know from my Tesla delivery video, I bought this car back in early January and took delivery in late January and have owned this car for just over a month now. And definitely for my first EV, owning a Tesla has really been a pretty great experience so far. Just a couple of small things have happened, which I will talk about in my review video that I will be posting soon. But for now, what I wanted to go into was talking about what life is like living with a Tesla, but not having the ability to charge at home. So for those of you who don't know, I live in an apartment. It's part of an entire complex where there is no available level 1 nor level 2 charging ability, meaning there's no parking spaces for myself or my wife to use that can allow us to charge the vehicle at home. So we live with some inconveniences that most Tesla owners, I would say, don't live with because a lot of people will go for their daily commute or go on a trip, and then at the end of the day they'll be home, and then the next morning their car will be full again. For us, that next morning has never been to a full or fully recharged vehicle. So the things that we have to get used to, knowing that our car is never going to be fully charged up in the morning, is just being more thoughtful of the future and pretty much our use of the car later on. And what I mean by that is, if you have absolutely a full battery charge, or at least 80-90% every morning, then you can pretty much do whatever you want that day and not have to worry about the battery depleting. For us, we may actually wake up with 50-40% battery life left, and there are some inconveniences that arise as a result of that. So for example, if you want to take a spontaneous trip with only 40% battery left, you're not getting very far before you need to recharge the car. And because of that, sometimes, and this has happened to us once or twice already, we've wanted to go on a spontaneous trip, and as a result we've needed to be able to take a gas vehicle, which is our Honda Pilot, in order to make it to our destination without having the hassle of needing to charge in between. Obviously, with Tesla superchargers, the inconvenience is much smaller, but it's still an inconvenience nonetheless. So one of the first questions you may ask is, without the ability to charge at home, where do you charge? So for us, there's actually not many superchargers right by where we live. And I don't really want to be using a supercharger as a sole means of charging up an electric vehicle, because I plan to keep this Tesla for a while and I want the battery's longevity to be as long as possible. What that means is you cannot just keep supercharging over and over again. The high charge rate of the Tesla battery will make it actually degrade faster. And I think that the difference in terms of how fast it degrades with regular charging versus supercharging is not a really big difference, but it's just something that makes you feel uncomfortable. It made me feel uncomfortable, really, to use a supercharger as a sole means of charging. So the way we actually charge is at my wife's workplace. And so she goes to work and she has parking spots which have level 2 charging. There are a couple of J1772 plugs available, and then there's also a Tesla wall charger available as well. And so the only time that my wife can actually charge up our vehicle is when she goes to work. And so that actually has its inconveniences as well, although the inconveniences are actually outweighed by the benefits, in my opinion. So when she goes to work in the morning, she parks in one of these spots and just plugs in her car. Usually she only plugs in when she needs to, which is maybe every other day or every third day. And at the end of her shift, she'll have a full battery, similar to at the next morning for most Tesla owners when their battery is full. Instead of in the morning, our car is full in the evening when she's done with work. The benefits, as I mentioned, that outweigh the inconvenience of this include that the level 2 public charging at her workplace is actually free for her. And so in essence, because we're using that as our sole means of charging, all our electricity for commuting and for using this vehicle is completely free, which I think is a pretty big thing. When Tesla gives you the approximate gas savings that you have over a 5-year period on their website, I believe it compares it to the cost of electricity on an average somewhere in the United States. But if your electricity is free, then the difference between gas and electricity is even greater. Now, obviously, this is a pretty special scenario where a lot of people won't be able to tap into this type of free electricity, but it's certainly something to think about. If you go on a website and look at where all the chargers are in your area, you might actually have a free level 2 public charging station near your house, in which case, if you don't have the ability to charge at home, that might be a very viable option. Now, obviously, with coronavirus, people are doing a lot of work from home. And because of that, you might make the argument, okay, so if you're working from home, you're gonna have to drive out of your way in order to charge up your car. And my wife and I are both in the healthcare field. And as a result of that, there really is no work from home. We end up going to work even when it is snowing really badly, or the conditions are just poor for actually driving. We still have to go to work. But actually, my wife just finished her maternity, and during that time she obviously wasn't going to work, and so we had a vehicle that we would have to charge up separately from her actually going to work. So I would probably consider that as a worst case scenario, meaning that for us would be kind of us being cut off from our electricity source. And so we had to be extra mindful during that time of our electricity usage in the vehicle and how much range we actually had, and whether or not we would actually be able to make it back to that particular charger in order to charge up. So we actually went to some other chargers. For example, we went to the mall where there was a level 2 public charging for free. The kilowatts on that was a little bit lower, but at the end of the day, it still gave us some time to, shop around in the mall, do our thing, and then come back to a pretty full tank of electricity. So the question then becomes, what are the inconveniences involved with not having home charging? And I think the biggest inconvenience is probably that you can't make use of some of the amenities that the electric car, or Tesla specifically, gives you. So for example, Sentry mode is a really big killer of the battery when your car is parked. When you use Sentry mode, your car's autopilot system or computer is actually on, and it's monitoring your surroundings around your car. As a result of that, the computer actually, from what I've read, takes something like 250 watts of power in order to run. And so you're constantly running basically a computer like you would inside your house, like a desktop computer. You're running a computer in order to be able to run Sentry mode. So taken by that calculation, you're ending up using 1 kilowatt hour of battery for every 4 hours of Sentry mode being on. And over a 24-hour period, that ends up to being 6 kilowatt hours, or almost 10% of the car's battery, which is pretty significant if you ask me. So basically, if you're using Sentry mode, the car's battery from 100% full, which it rarely ever is, will completely deplete it in less than 2 weeks. Obviously, with a gas vehicle, you can leave it for much longer than 2 weeks and still come back to it with a full tank of gas. Speaking of a tank of gas, I basically compare owning an EV with basically always driving around with a quarter tank of gas, because while the efficiency of the electric vehicle is very good, the amount of energy stored inside your entire battery pack is much smaller in a electric vehicle than, say, a full tank of gasoline. The energy equivalents are just no match for each other. Recently, we went on our first family vacation ever since our son Noah was born, and because of that, I was able to see how much battery loss there is without using Sentry mode. And seeing how much just idling in the cold winter month of New York, how much battery would just kind of go away even though the car is hibernating. Now, I was gone in Hawaii for 7 days. There was about 8 days of idling total, and looking at the app, I had a total of 15 miles lost just over 1 week of idling. So that ends up being just over 5% battery life, which is not too much if you ask me. If Sentry mode takes away 10% battery life in a day, 5% battery loss over 8 days is really not that bad. Because I was still relatively a new Tesla owner at the time that we went to Hawaii, I couldn't help myself but check the app every once in a while. And actually, I had a minor update installed to the vehicle during that week as well. So that 5% battery loss over the week actually could be a little bit less, which is great. And I apologize for my son crying in the background. He's trying to fall asleep right now, so he'll probably do that for a little bit before he's completely out. And speaking of Hawaii, I just wanted to show you guys a short film that I made from our trip. Hopefully you like it. I have some drone footage in there, some GoPro footage, and then some footage from my Sony a6400, which is the camera that is being used right now for filming. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was how the battery loss, idling at least, or parked rather, is going to fluctuate a lot based upon the environment. And so if it's cold outside, obviously the car will need to keep the batteries at a specific temperature, and so you'll have a little bit more loss there. But probably more so than the wintertime is the summertime, when the AC has to kick in to keep your cabin from overheating. Certainly this is something that doesn't need to be on, but will definitely make the car much more convenient not to go into it when it is very hot. So the cabin overheat protection is something that you can turn off, and this will be my first summer obviously with this new Tesla, and so I'm gonna try and figure out whether or not it's worth it at that time to have the cabin overheat protection on or not. Unlike the older Teslas, these newer Teslas, when they are actually parked, actually consume very little battery because the car is able to actually make itself asleep. Obviously, when your Sentry mode is on, the car never goes to sleep. But I just want to talk quickly about the inconveniences of turning Sentry mode off and actually having the car go off to sleep completely. The main inconvenience is that when you open the Tesla app, you have to wait maybe 5 to 10 seconds for the car to actually give you an update. And that's because it has to wake up the computer in order to give you all that information. If you do have Sentry mode on, then your car is already on, and so the app actually updates much faster. So with all that being said, does it really matter that I don't have in-home charging for my Tesla? Yes and no. So for times where we're not actually going to work, I think that, you know, it is an inconvenience because we can't use Sentry mode. By the way, I'll do a future video on Sentry mode and why I really don't think it's ready for prime time yet, and what my solution for Sentry mode actually will be. So stick around for that if you're interested. So because we can't use Sentry mode, that's definitely a minor inconvenience if there are many days between her going to work. Overall though, people who live in big cities often live in apartments, and as a result of that, they don't have any in-home charging. Many people still make it work, and that's what we're doing right now. In the next 2 years, we'll probably be buying a home where we'll have in-home charging. And so I can probably guarantee that it will be more convenient. But the inconveniences, I think, of owning a Tesla without in-home charging are really not as big as some people make it out to be. Some people do use superchargers on a weekly basis. They take a half hour out of their time every week to just charge up their car. And then if they're not driving a ton during the week, they can just charge their car once a week at a supercharger. Similarly, some people drive a lot and they actually use superchargers quite often because that's the only way they can keep up with the amount of driving they do. So At the end of the day, I think that living without a home charger for a Tesla, although it's a minor inconvenience, it's totally doable, and it shouldn't be the reason that you decide not to buy a Tesla. Really, the only reason I think you would not buy a Tesla right now without in-home charging is if you don't have any other place to charge it either, including superchargers, including level 2 chargers that are available. So that's basically it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys are interested, please subscribe and stay tuned for future videos on the Tesla. I'll be making more videos, so I hope you guys stay tuned. This is Zed for me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.